This story begins on May 17th, 2019. For a couple of years, I had been thinking about building a scale model of the Pyxis MedStation 4000/ES station. I work at BD, also known as Becton Dickinson, which bought CareFusion, a spin-off from Cardinal Health that had purchased Pyxis long before I joined the company. I supported this product for several years before transitioning into a software engineering role. A colleague and good friend of mine, Claude Vaillancourt, who started on the exact same day as me in August 2004, was set to retire in February 2020. With the recent addition of a 3D printer to my workshop, I thought creating a scale model would make an excellent and meaningful retirement gift for him. For those unfamiliar, a Pyxis MedStation is an automated medication dispensing system used in hospitals and healthcare facilities. It securely stores medications, tracks inventory, and ensures the right medication is dispensed to the right patient, essentially improving efficiency and safety in patient care. After discussing the idea with management, I got approval and funding to move forward with the project. I decided to build three models, one for Claude, one for myself, and one for management. The model would feature a 1.5-inch TFT screen paired with an Arduino NANO to display images of the MedStation in various operational states. Since the screen size dictated the scale of the model, I landed on a 1/10 scale, which conveniently made converting measurements straightforward. The drawers, which hold medication in the real device, would open and function just like their full-size counterparts. A standard MedStation has 6 drawers, so I plan to replicate the following: a mini drawer, a full-height Cubie drawer, a full-height matrix with return bin, a full-height matrix, a bin drawer, and a carousel drawer. In 2019, after 15 years of working with this product, I felt a strong connection to it. This made the project deeply personal and exciting to take on, promising to be both a fun and rewarding endeavor. After taking measurements of the real device and experimenting with designs, I finally completed my first functional drawer on June 16th, 2019, after 6 prototypes. It was a full-height, matrix-style drawer printed in red and white. Through extensive testing, I determined that the drawer needed to be printed in 3 parts: the exterior chassis, the drawer itself, and the faceplate. To ensure smooth operation, I added rails to each side to keep the drawer properly aligned as it slides out. By June 24th, after conducting several tests, I discovered that the best way to glue the front panel onto a drawer was to use multiple elastic bands. Without them, the panel tended to bend inward, compromising its alignment and appearance. 4 days later, I tackled what I initially thought would be the most challenging task: creating a functional carousel drawer at this scale. To my surprise, I proved myself wrong. A simple 1 mm pin, printed as part of the drawer, allowed the carousel to spin freely. The biggest challenge was dividing the carousel into evenly spaced pockets, but with some careful adjustments, I achieved the desired result. I'm especially pleased with how this particular drawer turned out. On July 4th, I proposed to management that I could make the scale model even more realistic by including a working display. I knew it was possible, but I had never attempted it before. Over the course of 2 evenings, and with plenty of help from online resources, I finally managed to get something to display on the tiny screen. I had initially told myself that, worst case scenario, I could always use a decal for the screen, but having a functional display would elevate the model significantly. The sense of relief was immense when I succeeded in getting a demo screen to work, powered by an Arduino Nano. The next day, I continued coding. While being able to draw on the screen was a great start, I really wanted to display an actual MedStation menu image. Behind the LCD display, I had a microSD card reader, and after another evening of work, I successfully read the data and displayed the bitmap with a resolution of 240 by 180 pixels. While I plan to include multiple images in the future, this proof of concept gave me the confidence to keep moving forward with this aspect of the project. I had initially planned to borrow a piece of plastic from a real MedStation and try to mix paint to match the color as closely as possible. Fortunately, by accident, I discovered that MedStation touch-up paint existed in water-based formulas. A colleague kindly ordered it for me, and I was able to get 3 bottles of dark mauve paint, along with a bottle of light mauve for the mini drawers and keyboard. One thing's for sure, You can't beat using original paint on a scale model. On the evening of July 17th, I decided to work on a simple part, the bottom faceplate located under the last drawer. It turned out to be quite straightforward. I took the 3D model of the faceplate and added two evenly spaced slices. Initially, I printed three separate parts, but then I realized that adding a small backplate to hold everything together would keep the pieces aligned. This not only improved the appearance, but also made the installation much easier. While I would have loved to have working mini drawers, it just wasn't practical at 1/10 scale. However, I realized I might need the space from drawer 1 to store the electronics that might be too large for the eDrawer, the space behind the monitor. Mini drawers can be configured in multiple sizes and positions, so I decided to go with a combination of 6 singles, 3 doubles, and 2 triple width mini drawers. After a couple of revisions, I was satisfied with the results. All that's left now is a bit of sanding to smooth them out. By August 8th, I had enough printed drawers to test them in the chassis of the MedStation and get a sense of whether everything would fit properly. The first thing I noticed was a small gap at the top. I quickly realized that there's a spacer between the first two drawers from the top that I needed to create. Something I hadn't noticed before, to be honest. I also discovered that the top of the chassis needed to be removed to make room for the electronics. Fortunately, nothing an X-Acto knife couldn't handle. By the end of August, I had designed and printed the return bin that would go inside the matrix drawer. A return bin is used by nurses to securely return unused medication. To make painting easier, I created the parts separately. These are the types of small details that I really enjoy working on. They add a lot to the final product and make the process even more rewarding. It's now early September, and I've been incredibly busy printing and painting all the drawers, drawer chassis, and the chassis of the MedStation itself. My workbench is starting to resemble a production line with all the parts coming together. All the parts require 2 coats of paint, along with masking and cleanup afterward. It's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun, seeing everything come together step by step. September 11th, 2019 was my 40th birthday, and what better way to end the day than with a session of scale modeling? By the 17th, after some testing, I decided to glue together the bottom 4 drawers to ensure they aligned properly and to strengthen the model. In hindsight, I think I could have printed this all as one piece, but then again, the end result would have been the same. With the drawer chassis glued to the MedStation chassis, I inserted the painted drawers and added the spacer to the top. So far, I'm really impressed with how this little project is turning out. On September 22nd, I finally completed the matrix drawer with the return bin. I decided to customize the matrix drawer rather than going with a standard layout. I also painted the lock mechanism on the return bin. These small details help make the model more interesting and realistic. I completed the standard matrix drawers and really like how the drawer rails stand out with the painted aluminum sliders. It's a small touch, but it adds a nice bit of realism to the model. By the end of September, I glued the bottom faceplate and middle separation plate, then painted all the gaps left when I glued the drawer chassis to the main chassis. On October 11th, with the mini drawers on the top glued in place, I tested the first version of the eDrawer to see how it would look. The eDrawer is the most complicated part, and I know it will require several versions before I'm fully satisfied, but seeing this first prototype on the chassis really impressed me. I had been struggling for a while to figure out how to make the Cubie drawers. Cubies are small containers used for holding medication. The Cubie can be inserted and removed from the drawer while the lid remains locked, keeping the meds secure. In the real MedStation, there's a small gap around each Cubie to separate them in the drawer. My first attempt was to 3D print an outline to glue onto the transparent plastic, but I wasn't happy with the results since I couldn't print thin enough. Then I remembered an old modeling trick, using a black marker to create fake grooves. This method worked really well and was simple to execute. On Halloween night, after several revisions of the screen bezel, I finally achieved the perfect fit. I couldn't wait to see how the finished product would look, and I'm absolutely amazed at how this project is coming together. While I had been testing the circuitry with a large Arduino Uno, 68.6mm by 53.3mm, I needed to switch to the much smaller Arduino NANO, 43.2mm by 18.5mm, for it to fit inside the model. Additionally, I decided to stop using the built-in microSD card reader on the LCD and instead use a dedicated microSD card reader. This change allowed me to position the reader at the back of the model for easy access. If I had kept using the LCD's card reader, the microSD card would have been sealed off and inaccessible. While it wasn't strictly necessary to make the card accessible, I liked the idea of being able to update the image files if I felt the need to do so. Up until November 12th, I had been struggling to find a solution to prevent the drawers from falling out when the model was manipulated. My initial idea was to add a lip at the front of the drawer chassis, so the back end of the drawer would catch. While this worked initially, I noticed that the drawers would droop down considerably. Not satisfied with the result, I decided to switch to using hooks and fishing line. The tricky part was ensuring that each drawer wouldn't extend farther than the others. I had to redo the lines a few times, but in the end, it worked really well. As a bonus, I was able to make the carousel drawer open only halfway, just like the real one. A few days later, I test fitted all the electronics to ensure everything would work properly. Initially, I wanted to place a red LED for the BioID, but I quickly realized that the Arduino NANO was in the way. A BioID is a fingerprint reader that allows users to enter the system without using a password. After about 10 to 15 minutes of trying to find a solution, I had a stroke of luck. The Arduino Nano already had a red LED on the board, and by chance, it was located right next to the BioID lens position. A quick test confirmed that the light would emit through the hole. It turned out to be a great solution. No soldering required for this small but important detail. By November 18th, after spending 2.5 hours the previous weekend soldering all the parts and triple checking the wiring, I finally completed the first electronics assembly. All that remained was updating the Arduino Nano software and loading the new images onto the SD card. I was a bit nervous about potentially damaging my PC, but after taking a few precautions, everything went smoothly. 2 days later, I completed installing all the electronics, using hot glue to keep everything in place. I also installed two gray panels to cover the holes in the back where the micro SD card and mini USB port are located. With all that wiring, there's not much space left. While attempting to glue the eDrawer to the chassis, I realized there was a small gap, and things wouldn't align properly. To my dismay, the wires from the Arduino Nano were causing the issue. I took out my Dremel drill and carefully made a notch on the right side. I had already made a notch on the left side to allow the screen to fit properly, and after all the drilling, everything fit perfectly. Using some elastic bands, I superglued everything together and let it dry overnight. Here are some showcase photos of the MedStation Mini. The first drawer at the top is a mini drawer. The second drawer is a full-height Cubie drawer. The third drawer is a full-height matrix drawer with a return bin. The fourth drawer is a full-height matrix drawer. The fifth drawer is a bin drawer. And the sixth drawer is a carousel drawer that can spin like the real thing. Here we can see the boot post screen, which displays for 3 seconds when powered on. The MedStation 4000 loading screen. Pressing a button on the back changed the image. Here is the MedStation 4000 login screen. Now the MedStation 4000 main menu screen. The MedStation ES loading screen. The MedStation ES login screen. The MedStation ES main menu screen. And finally, the credit screen. On the back of MedStation, you can see where the USB port to provide power is located, the micro SD card, and the screen image push button are located. The back panel even has painted screws and a warning label. On Thursday, November 21st, 2019, I proudly presented Claude Vaillancourt with his retirement gift, the MedStation Mini, in front of the Quebec Support Center. There I was, nervous as could be, explaining to the entire department my little idea of creating a scale model MedStation. As I presented the project, I could hear gasps of amazement from the crowd, which gave me a mix of relief and pride. I went on to explain the story behind the creation of this scale model, as no one was aware of my true motive. Then I called my colleague and friend, Claude Vaillancourt, to come up in front. He seemed to suspect something, but wasn't quite sure what was happening. When I announced to everyone that the MedStation Mini was a retirement gift for Claude on behalf of the entire team, the applause was louder than I ever expected. It truly took me by surprise. After the ceremony, Claude and I stood proudly next to the scale model and a real MedStation 4000. It was a moment I'll never forget. Standing there with the MedStations, I couldn't help but feel incredibly proud of what I had been able to accomplish.
So as you can see here, we got the MedStation Mini. It's got your mini drawers at the top. It's got Cubie drawers.
Are you kidding?
It has, bear with me. It has a matrix drawer with a return bin. A standard matrix drawer. A return bin, probably put some coins in there, cash. And a working carousel drawer. Working carousel drawer. I was pretty proud of that one.
Awesome.
And it's fully detailed. It's a 1/10 scale. So it was actually a labor of love and dedication to what we all do here. So let me put that down. Back to my notes. So now that I've shared my dream and my idea, very small idea, but pretty cool, I think. I want to share with you now my objective, why I did this. You know, because I make scale models. I'm sure most people don't know that, but I do scale models and I do other stuff. But I want to do something for civilians. So I would like to. Sorry, I'm a bit shy. Oh. That didn't help. Okay, so I would like to call here to be with me a colleague of mine and close friend, Claude. Would you come here, please? He's gonna cry. So, Claude, as I'm sure many of you know, has 2 months and 26 days. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Left before his official. Before his official retirement. And I know Claude has touched a lot of us in many ways. Well, maybe not. That wasn't planned. But I gotta be really careful. As much as he's helped us in our careers, in our day-to-day tasks, and even personally, not that personally. So I'd like to present to you on behalf of all the TSC this gift for you. Thank you.